Losing your hair is a very frustrating thing. Sure, there's some guys and gals that can pull off the shaved head look, but what about the rest of us? Well, for the rest of us, we just gotta deal with people talking behind our backs about how bad we look without any hair, or if they tell us something in front of our face, they say how much better we used to look with hair. And if you're a vain guy like me, well, you lose a little bit of self-confidence every time that happens. Though with today's technology, you can get your natural hair back in a matter of 6 months to a year. That is, of course, if you have the money to do all that. But what if you don't have $10,000 to $60,000 to do all that? Well, you're either left with wearing a wig, toupee, or like you see now, a hat. That is until now. In this video, I'll show you a non-surgical, economic way how you can get your natural hair back simply by using the tools and supplies you would normally have around the house. Though I'm not going to lie to you, I'm not a doctor, and the only way that this process works is if you have the time and dedication to do it properly. But if you have those two things, you'll be very happy with the results you can get using this program. So if you think you have those two things and you're interested, well, let's get started. Believe me, I know the information I'm about to tell you and show you may come off as offbeat, but if you give it a shot, it works. By the end of this video, I'm confident you'll see this option as a cost-effective method to get your hair back if you don't have the money to do it with more conventional methods. You're only going to need 6 tools to do this process, but it is very important that you keep your tools and workstation as clean as possible at all times. You're going to need a clean paper towel, not a semi-clean paper towel you just clean the floor with or wash your hands with, but a clean paper towel. With this paper towel, you will split it in two and use one side to immerse it in rubbing alcohol, while the other side will be used to clean your scalp during the time you work on your hairline. You will need a lot of alcohol when doing this process to clean your tools like your needle on the string and your tweezers, but also your workstation. It doesn't matter what percent of volume it is of alcohol as long as it is rubbing alcohol. The key thing to remember though is to use it to constantly clean your tools and workstation before, during, and after each time you work on your hairline. You will need a simple pair of tweezers to do this process, preferably ones that don't taper out in the nose, or fishbone tweezers as they're called. You don't want to use those types. Basically tweezers that allow you to use them with ease and give you great mobility to your wrist when using them over your head. But if you still have any doubts, you can go to our website for further suggestions. The first question you will probably ask yourself is, what is the correct size sewing needle I need to start doing this process? And, well, simply one that has a diameter about the same size as your hair follicles, or a little bit smaller than that. Later on we'll talk about the subject of when to change your needle after you've worked with it for a while. You might also wonder what is the purpose of threading the needle with the string, and that is to help you have better control of the needle and keep it from falling on the floor or other surfaces where it's sure to pick up bad bacteria you don't want to introduce onto your scalp or under the tissue underneath your scalp. You will use iodine for various purposes in this process to increase your hairline. First, to clean the scalp and keep bad bacteria from forming and growing on it. Second, using iodine regularly keeps your scalp from becoming too flaky in the areas you've been working on. And third, iodine assists the scalp to heal from the punctures you've made. You're going to need a mirror to do this process so you can see your scalp as you're working on it. What I have showing here is a portable two-sided mirror that has one side that shows me in a large view that I use to see detail on my scalp, and the other side a normal proportion view that shows me any areas that look unnatural and need attention. You can use a regular mirror, but from my experience I feel a mirror with an enlarged proportion or magnified view lets you work easier when you're working on your scalp. I admit, while this mirror is portable, it is quite small, so if you like to use a larger mirror, you can use so to view your hairline more comfortably. Like I said before, this process takes time and dedication because essentially what you will be doing is transplanting hairs from one part of your body onto the scalp. So due to the shock of being extracted from their area of origin, some hairs will die off before being accustomed to the scalp and promoting new hair growth. The other hairs that manage to stay on your scalp for a prolonged period of time will stimulate new hair growth, but like all hairs, they too will fall off once they reach the end of their life cycle. So don't become stressed when that happens. This process works, but it takes time and dedication. In the following progress sequence, you will see the steady progress I was able to make in a year, with some necessary breaks to heal the scalp during that time. In this progress sequence, remember that these pictures were taken with intense lighting for the benefit of clear images, though they distort actual results under natural light. So here I am after 3 months of doing this process, and you will see I still have almost no progress to speak of. I have almost no hairs on the front part of my scalp, and what does appear to be hair is actually big dry scalp flakes. The reason this is the case is because I was using the wrong tools and technique when working on my hairline, like using a very thick diameter needle and inserting the hairs the wrong way. Once you're 3 months into doing this process, you will probably be further ahead in progress than what you see in this picture compared to me. 3/22/2011. Here you see a clean scalp with a buzz cut, but no real progress to speak of, only stubs of hair, and that brings me to an important piece of information. When you insert your hairs into your scalp, do not immediately cut off the top ends of those hairs to make them look uniform with the rest of your scalp hairs. You see, the donor hairs you just extracted are already in a state of shock from that process, so to snip off the top end causes it further injury and decreases the chances it will stay a prolonged period of time on your scalp to promote new hair growth. In this process, only after those hairs have been on your scalp for a month or a little bit better, if you want to wait longer, then you should attempt to cut off the top ends and make them look uniform with the rest of your scalp hairs. This waiting period gives your transplanted hairs a little bit of healing period from the shock of being extracted and better improves the chances they will stimulate new hair growth on your scalp. 4/24/2011. Here you can see progress appear. I was refining my technique and becoming faster and better at transplanting hairs. This will also happen to you. You see, at first it will be a struggle just to keep your hand steady and not become frustrated when doing this process, but with practice you'll become faster and better at transplanting your hair follicles. 5/4/2011. Here more progress as well, but as you can see I have a few scabs on my scalp, and that is because I wasn't using iodine as regularly as I was supposed to. Also in this period I was more focused in the middle front of my scalp and not much very concentrated on the side areas of my scalp, and that's fine, but in my opinion, if you want better results and appearance, you should also work on the side areas of your scalp, even though it is more painful to do so. 6/5/2011. A month later, and it looks good in terms of progress, so I took a break after this picture was taken, because it was getting too hot in my part of the world, and blood, sweat, and dirt don't mix well at all with punctures to the scalp. So if it's getting too hot in your part of the world too, take a break and give your scalp time to heal and continue when the heat lets up. If you're living in the part of the world where it's always hot, then only do this process in temperature controlled areas. 8/19/2011. Here I continued after letting my scalp heal for a while. 10/9/2011. Here I was running into serious problems. You see, I was in a frantic mindset trying to finish this process and be done with it, but as you can see here, that only made things worse with major scabs now all over my scalp. So as I said before, this process takes time, so take your time and don't rush it. After all, you're going to have to go back and do maintenance work on your hairline every so often to keep it in top form, because hair is hair and it always seems to be requiring attention. 11/7/2011. Here I started using iodine more regularly, but as you notice I look like a mess with the long hairs and the short transplanted hairs, so unless you're just patching up small bald spots, I recommend cutting your hair to a short length when doing this process, maybe to around 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch short. This also helps you easier identify spots you don't have much hair in and see what areas you can work on. 11/23/2011. Here more progress and now expanding to the side areas of my scalp. Also by now the transplanted hairs have started to stimulate new hair growth, though I will admit you can see from the redness of my scalp that I should have been giving it more time to heal and regenerate. 12/09/2011. More progress, but if you look at the top view, one would say I should have focused more on the outer edges, as they appear to hardly have any hair growth to speak of. The reason I neglected this area is because for months before this picture was taken, I was seeing growth of the vellus hairs, or so-called peach fuzz hairs in those areas, which I thought were generated by hairs I had inserted in that area. It's hard to see in this picture, but they're there. If you're wondering what vellus hairs are, well, vellus hairs are like baby hairs, except they never become full adult hairs. 1/13/2012. So here I am, and it's a new year, and I'm still keeping at it after over a year of doing this process, and still making steady progress, though as you can see, some spots still need work on them done. 3/1/2012. Here I took some rest and let my scalp heal, and as you can see, some hairs have fallen out from the last picture, but like I said before, that's expected. But for the most part, many hairs have stayed on the scalp and have stimulated new hair growth in areas I didn't have any hairs before when I first started doing this process. 3/29/2012. 20 plus days later, and I got into a groove and regularly worked on my scalp, and as you can see, it looks good, but I probably should have focused more on the side areas of my scalp, like I always keep saying I'm going to do, but I always neglect. 4/7/2012. Here it looks good. The only thing I need to do is touch up the hairline gaps that look too big to look natural. First, before you start every work session on your scalp, it is absolutely necessary, I dare say imperative, that your scalp is as clean as possible from sweat, dirt, dandruff, and other bad bacteria that can cause problems to your scalp. The way to do this is by first taking a shower, shampooing your scalp with a volumizing shampoo of your choice, then blow drying your scalp. In fact, I would say that is the only time you should even try to work on your hairline, because that is the only time your scalp is clean enough to do so. Your mirror is very important. You can use a bigger mirror than the one I use, and if you do, you can probably get a better view of what you're doing compared to the little one that I have shown here. Also, if you're trying to fix bald spots in the back area of your scalp, it is better and a good idea to invest in a mirror with a flexible arm you can adjust. With this mirror, what I like to do is position it in a way I can flip from the magnified view to the normal proportion view so I can see I have any gaps in the hairline that look unnatural and fix those gaps. Like I said before, you need to clean your tools and workstation every time you start to work on your hairline for a while. So clean all your tools like your needle on a string and tweezers by using half of your paper towel and immersing it with rubbing alcohol and wiping off your tools with this paper towel. Also, if you need to put down your tools for any reasons during this time while working on your hairline, then set them down on top of the paper towel with the rubbing alcohol to keep them safe from bacteria. Do not set your tools on any other surface, as that surface might have bacteria you do not want to introduce on your scalp area or underneath the skin tissue of your scalp. Okay, you're almost ready to start working on your hairline, but when you first start doing this process, you might wonder what is the best area you should start working on. Ideally, I would tell you where your hairline ends and just gradually go from there and move outwards to areas where you don't have any hair volume in. The benefit of doing it this way is it helps you hide any noticeable signs that you have any hairline progress, so you don't get any intrusive questions like, did you get a hair transplant? Though probably better, when you first start out, pick an area of the scalp you feel most comfortable and have the most control puncturing your scalp and inserting your donor hairs, because when you first start out, you might feel your hand a little bit shaky. The next question you might ask is, how deep of a puncture should you make so you can properly insert your donor hairs? Well, everyone's scalp is not exactly the same, but as a general rule, a minimum of 3/16 to a maximum of 5/16 should you puncture the scalp. If you're going to go a quarter of an inch deep, you're probably going to get a lot of blood vessel ruptures. We'll go over how to deal with blood vessel ruptures later on in this video, though if you do get a blood rupture, the main thing to remember is to not panic, but when it does happen, what you're going to do is get the other half of your clean paper towel and stop the bleeding by applying pressure to the rupture until it stops, which is usually about 30 to 40 seconds if you apply pressure correctly and use a dry, clean paper towel. Of course, before you begin, make sure your needle is not dull, because if it is, the puncturing part of this process is going to hurt more than it needs to. When I first started doing this process, I was using a large diameter needle, and every time I punctured my scalp, it hurt immensely. If you're doing the same thing, change needles immediately, because it's not going to get any less painful. Plus, your donor hairs will fall out more often than usual, you will cause more blood ruptures, and you will just be wasting more of your time during this period. Though if you have any doubts as to the correct size diameter needle you need, visit our website for suggestions. So here you see the proper way to puncture your scalp, which is basically described as press against your scalp and puncture in a little bit with your needle, then draw it back, puncture a little bit further in, then draw back the needle again, and do this until you reach less resistance from your scalp skin. So here we see it again, where you puncture a little bit in with the needle, then draw back, puncture a little further in, draw back again. Do this until you reach less resistance from your scalp or see a small speck of blood coming from the puncture. Also, when you're doing this step, it may hurt, but please don't close your eyes while doing this, as this just causes further problems. When I say this, I don't want you to close your eyes and draw the needle further in than you need to, because that might cause you blood vessel ruptures, and that just means more mess and losing time trying to clean that mess up. So do not close your eyes when doing this process. Once you've made the puncture, clean off any excess blood around the puncture with your clean paper towel by lightly dabbing it on the puncture surface and being mindful of not damaging other transplanted hairs in that area. You might be tempted to make several punctures at the same time to save you time, but in my experience, you seem to miss several of the punctures you made come time to start inserting hairs. So resist yours to do so and just make one puncture at a time. In the long run, it will be better for your scalp tissue. Also, when you're working on your scalp, work on it by moving across your hairline if you're doing it this way, and not just covering up bald patches. Working on one little area damages the scalp tissue, so avoid that. Once you've been working on your scalp for a while, you will have enough hairs where you will just be trying to cover up gaps that look unnatural in the hairline. When you reach that point, then you can skip around to any parts of the scalp you feel need work. One important note on puncturing. In this video, you may hear me talking about resting the scalp. What I mean by this is, along with using iodine regularly to heal the scalp and keep it free of unwanted bacteria and scalp flakes if you're working on your hairline every day, is, after a while, without a few weeks of stopping, you will see the scalp tissue in the areas you've been working on, they will start to turn a pinkish red color. When that happens, it's time to stop the process for the time being and let the scalp heal its tissue from the relentless daily puncturing you have been putting it through, because your scalp tissue fibers need you to let the area regenerate enough to provide a stronger, tighter hold on your transplanted hairs, and to return the scalp tissue to normal color as well. While medical research is still ongoing and debating the healing properties of this plant, along with iodine, you can also use natural aloe vera gel to alleviate redness of the scalp. Also, as I said before, when puncturing the side areas of your scalp, this may hurt more than when you puncture on the top areas of your scalp, so be ready for that. Another note as well is, do not puncture several holes all at once, then start inserting hairs. You'll lose track of where you punctured and you might miss spots where you were ready to put hair in. So one at a time, make a puncture and then put a hair in that puncture. Sometimes, while making the puncture for your donor hairs, you will also puncture a blood vessel that immediately sets off a heavy rupture of blood. If this happens, do not panic. Simply apply pressure to the rupture with your clean paper towel. Apply pressure until the bleeding stops, which for me usually means applying pressure for 30 to 40 seconds until the blood flow stops. If you like, you can also pour cold water onto the puncture afterwards, or substitute it for the clean paper towel and stop the bleeding that way as well. Don't apply excess pressure on the puncture when it's bleeding. Lightly dab the puncture with a paper towel so as to not damage any of the transplanted hairs in that area. When stopping the rupture of blood by cold water method, you're going to want to do this over a sink or in the shower. Remember, apply cold water or water that is a little under room temperature on the puncture area. Now that you're ready to start extracting hairs, you may be asking yourself two questions like, what areas of the body can I use hairs from, and what types of hairs can I use to do this process? And I will tell you, I've used them all, and from my experience, you can use hairs from all over your body, but remember, don't use leg hairs for any reason whatsoever. And when using facial hairs, use caution and care. Why? Well, because since you're primitively extracting donor hairs in those areas with your tweezers, sometimes the new hairs that grow in those places come out ingrown and are unable to penetrate the skin surface, which can feel painful and itchy for days, weeks, or even months. Also, use extraction areas that are concealable, like in your pelvic area, because sometimes areas that are heavily used for extracting hairs will develop many ingrown hairs in that spot, and while not feeling itchy or painful, may give the appearance you have unhealthy red skin blemishes in those areas, or simply put, a bad case of acne in those areas, like in this picture shown here. You may be asking yourself now, is he saying pubic hairs are also usable in this process? Yes. Try to use as many as you can to fill in your scalp, though an advanced piece of advice to you so you don't get discouraged later on is because pubic hairs are sometimes a bit more larger in diameter than normal hairs found on your scalp. They may look out of place on your scalp, but more importantly, if you use too thick of a pubic hair, it may not stay in place long enough to grab a hold of your scalp and stimulate new hair growth. So use pubic hairs a lot, but only use pubic hairs with a small diameter, more along the lines with hairs you normally find in your scalp, to reduce the amount of hairs that fall out after inserting them in your scalp. Okay, now that you know what areas of the body you can use hairs from, now let's move on to the topic of what are the best types of hairs you can use in this process. I will tell you donor hairs that are extracted with shaggy roots, like the one shown here, are ideal. When you extract the hairs with your tweezers, usually you will get these types of shaggy root hairs, though sometimes you might extract a more complete hair with white sheet on the sides and ends of the hair. Those types of hairs are fine to use as well, though a little bit harder to insert in the puncture you just made, though give it a try and with practice you'll be able to insert those types of donor hairs as well. Okay, now you're ready to start inserting hairs, so immediately after you've made the puncture for the hair, and in less than 30 seconds after you've extracted the donor hair, insert it into the puncture. With your tweezers, grab hold of the hair you've just extracted and slowly wiggle and push it into the puncture you've made until you feel you can no longer push it in any further. Then try to straighten it up perpendicular to your scalp and then move on to your next hair. Remember, don't spin or twirl the donor hair once you've set it in place, and remember you might want to, but resist the urge to scratch the areas you've been inserting hairs in. Also, you're going to want to stay away from picking your scalp areas you've been working on as well, because that increases the probability of damage to the hair follicles you've just inserted onto your scalp. So resist the urge to pick or scratch your scalp area. What you can try and do instead is rinse off your scalp with warm water, or go further and shampoo your hair with volumizing shampoo and let the shampoo sit on your hair for a few minutes, then rinse it off and blow dry your scalp. I find this works when I get the urge to start picking or scratching my scalp. Generally, if you've been working on your hairline for 30 minutes or so each day for a while, you should discard the needle you've been working with and change it with a new one every 3 weeks or so. If you don't change your needle regularly, you will find the puncturing process becomes more painful and you might experience more blood vessel ruptures than normal. So remember, don't forget to change your needle regularly. Every time you work on your hairline, always start with a clean scalp. So ideally work on your hairline only after you've taken a shower and have blow dried your scalp. Since I don't have a water resistant camera, I'll be demonstrating this outside of the shower with clothes on. Shampoo all of your scalp thoroughly with the volumizing shampoo of your choice, though if you feel it is not working, stop using it and change to another one. But the important thing though is when shampooing your hair is to lather well, and I mean lather all of your scalp, including the areas you've been working on. When you do this, dab on the shampoo onto your areas you've been working on, but don't agitate the area with your fingers, just pat it on. Though if you feel your shampoo is not working, you can visit our website for the natural blend I use to help stimulate the hair growth on my scalp. After showering and before blow drying your hair, you may notice a few donor hairs that have fallen over due to the movement caused by the shampooing of your scalp. This is unavoidable, it happens to me all the time. In fact, I've had to place a few new hairs in certain areas several times because of this, so don't get discouraged. The best thing you can do is to take out those donor hairs with your tweezers and insert a new one in that puncture after you blow dried your scalp. You can also try and set it back in place, but in my experience, the first time a hair becomes dislodged, it ends up dying anyways and falls off completely in a matter of a few days. Also, another thing you can do to help solidify the transplanted hair is to shampoo your hair follicles with your volumizing shampoo in between showers and then blow drying it. What you do is you rinse your scalp with warm water while outside of the shower, shampoo your hair and then leave the shampoo on for 10 to 15 minutes. Then rinse off your scalp and blow dry your hair. When using your blow dryer, set it to the warm or hot setting. The cold setting increases the chances there is still some unwanted bacteria left on your scalp, and naturally don't hold it too close to your scalp because, as you know, you might burn yourself and also you might injure the transplanted hairs. When I'm out in public, I usually wear a trucker hat like the one you saw in the intro of this video because it provides coverage and discreetness to the work I've done on my scalp and also provides a constant circulating airflow inside the hat. If you're going to wear a hat while doing this process, only wear a hat that has a mesh backing, or you might run into serious problems with your scalp due to the heat generated by your scalp underneath wool or cotton fabric type hats or caps. This heat coupled with sweat and dirt can cause nasty things to your scalp, though I realize due to your work or other factors you might not be able to wear a hat, so if that is the case, just try to go slow and keep your scalp as clean as possible before, during, and after working on your hairline. In this process, you'll want to go slow, so start working on your hairline where it ends and push outwards from that area gradually to areas where you don't have any hair and would like to have some. Also, another effective way to hide your progress, and also the best way to see what areas of your scalp are missing hair and need work, is to give yourself a buzz cut. You can either cut your hair with an electric clipper using a 1/8 inch or a 1/4 of an inch hair attachment, or if you want a closer cut, use a clipper without any attachment at all. Giving yourself a buzz cut gives you 3 important benefits. Number 1, better visibility to view areas that need hair volume. Number 2, it's easier to access all your scalp now because you don't have any long or medium-sized hairs that are blocking your visibility. Number 3, it's easier for your increasing expanding hairline to go unperceived. It is essential that you use iodine regularly when doing this process. There are various reasons to use iodine in this process, and the top 3 ones are listed right now. Number 1, to keep your scalp clean from any harmful bacteria that might cause pus or inflammation. Number 2, to strip off old skin flakes that form on your scalp from all the punctures you make. And number 3, to help the scalp heal all of those punctures. When applying iodine, apply it in all areas you've been working on, but slowly as to not damage the transplanted donor hairs. Do this at least 2 to 3 times a week to help keep any unwanted bacteria from developing on the scalp. So as you see here, I start on one spot and gradually expand until I have covered all areas I've been working on and beyond. Yes, I know it looks awful, but remember, you're not going to do this when you're heading out for work, or you have an important business presentation, or you're going on a date. Do this when you're calling it a day and going to sleep. You might be wondering, is iodine really necessary? And I will tell you, yes, it is. It is an important step that you need to do in this process to keep your scalp from looking like this. In this picture, my scalp began to look like this because I did all the other steps properly, but I neglected to use iodine properly, which resulted in all these scabs and redness you see in this picture. Like I said before, give it a month or a little bit longer than that to make the donor hairs you just inserted onto your scalp look uniform with the ones you already have on. Once you've given the scalp and hairs sufficient time to heal, then you can cut them to make them look uniform with the rest of your hairs. Here I start off using a 1/4 of an inch hair attachment clip, then a 1/8 of an inch attachment clip, until I feel the hair looks uniform with the scalp. Also remember to clean your hair clippers before and after you use them. If you're going to cut your own hair, which is the best thing to do really, with electric clippers, lightly pass over the areas you've been working on, and don't press on the scalp area too hard, or you might injure the transplanted hairs and reopen recently made punctures. Every section in this video is important, so view them again when you can, but there are certain things you must not forget. Always keep your tools and workstation as clean as possible. If you don't, the risk of infecting your scalp with bacteria foreign to it increases tremendously, especially if you drop any of your working tools like your needle or tweezers on the floor or any other unclean surfaces. Don't use a large gauge or large diameter needle because it's going to make this process more painful and messy than it needs to be. I tried that already and it doesn't work. Also, use iodine regularly. Your scalp is going to start looking really bad if you don't. Just go back to view my picture to see how bad, and you'll remember why I keep stressing this constantly. Resist the urge to scratch the hairs you've transplanted. If you feel you must scratch your itchy scalp, then shampoo your hair with your volumizing shampoo, blow dry it, and if you want, apply iodine to it as well afterwards. Don't rush this process. The best way to recuperate your hairline using this process is with a slow and steady approach. Otherwise, more redness on your scalp due to constant puncturing will become more apparent, or I will even say very noticeable unless you start wearing a hat. Remembering these 5 things will save you problems with bacteria on your scalp and less pain when doing this process. It may seem common sense, some of the tips I give you in this section, but it may be worth your time to remember them, or perhaps you hadn't thought of them before. You will be inserting the root tip of your donor hair inside the scalp, meaning the end of the hair that has the roots, well, that's the end that you stick inside your scalp. I know it may be hard if you're not used to it, but if you can, try to sleep with your face up to avoid damage to the hairs you have inserted into your scalp. This cuts down on the times you will have to go back and reinsert hairs in that same area, and it gives you faster progress as well. You have to remember you have to give your scalp time to heal. I know it can be exciting when you're gaining traction and you start seeing the actual results of your progress and want to keep going at lightning fast pace, but you have to give your tender red scalp time to heal to repair the tissue fibers of your scalp so they can produce a stronger grip on current and future transplanted hairs and give those hairs a better chance of staying on your scalp and growing new hairs. Like I said earlier in this video, if you keep doing this process for a prolonged period of time without stopping, your scalp will develop a tender red tone due to all the puncturing you have been doing to it. So to keep all the redness down, try using aloe vera on your scalp. You don't need a large piece, just a small piece you can split in two and apply to your scalp like shown here. It's important to be up and close to the mirror you're using so you can have the best view possible when puncturing and inserting. If you're too far away from the mirror, it becomes hard to locate the needlepoint punctures you've made, and inserting hairs into them is just as hard. You might ask yourself, when do the new hairs start to appear on your scalp and start growing? Well, while your transplanted hairs stay on your scalp for a long period of time before falling out and producing new growth in that area if inserted properly, I've noticed it takes 6 to 8 months or so until I saw new growth hair appear in those areas that I've transplanted hairs in. After watching this video, you may be thinking to yourself, hey, it's probably the volumizing shampoo that's doing all the work and not this transplanted hairs business that he keeps going on about. And I thought the same thing too, but then I noticed balding areas where I had left untouched did not grow any new hairs even after 8 months of using the volumizing shampoo. But parts that I did insert hairs in, well, all around them, new small hairs started to rise up from the scalp. So trust me, it works. One other thing you can do to help you not lose your needle with the string like I do sometimes is to put a bright piece of tape on the end you like to hold, like this. This also keeps from causing a callus on the inside of your middle finger when you're using that area to puncture your scalp. If you use too many, you might create new bald patches, but if you want, use hairs from the side to fill in the top parts of your scalp. I realize that once you start to build some thickness on your scalp, it may get harder to locate the punctures you made to insert the hairs, because so many hairs are now in the way. So after you become proficient with the techniques I've shown you in this video, you can leave the needle in your scalp until you have transplanted hairs in your tweezers ready to transplant, but don't keep the needle in there for too long. Well, that's the end of this video, but I'm pretty confident with all that you've seen and learned in this video, you have more than enough information to get you on the road to getting your natural hair back. Though you have to remember, this is always going to be a slow and steady process, but if you put in the time and dedication to learn the process, you'll be very happy with the results you can get using this program. Also, as you can see, I still have a little bit of work to do on my front of my head, so I'm going to be doing this program alongside of you, and you can catch my updates and new tips and information on the company website listed below. Well, I think that's it for now, and thank you for watching, and until next time.